Great. Well, all here. Welcome back to Girl Geek X Elevate. This is our afternoon session. We will be talking about our unconventional journeys in tech, since it seems like that seems to be more common than people realize. The diverse pathways we have found to our jobs, that we get lots of people coming up to us and saying, wow, you're doing a really good job. That's a successful career. And we're like, oh, okay. How did you get there? So hopefully we'll be able to share some of these stories. And I'm going to ask each of our panelists to talk about themselves and share their backgrounds and their journeys and kind of tell us their personal stories.
Sure. I'd love to start. Hi, everybody. Oh, I feel like I'm echoing.
I think you sound fine.
Okay, cool. Hi, I'm Shanea. I started actually my career as an analyst, and I wanted to get into, I was really interested in getting into tech, and I actually started a digital marketing agency way back when. That was worked really, really well. I taught myself to code for a number of years. And the thing about myself is that after starting doing the entrepreneur thing, I wanted to get into tech in Silicon Valley. And so I ended up taking a job at Google as a program manager. And along the way, I really wanted to get into product management, except that the prerequisite at the time was that you needed a computer science degree. And for myself, having gone on a ton of journeys trying to figure out how to navigate the tech space, one of the big questions was, am I technical enough? Do I have enough technical skill? And so in order to get that product management job, I had a few options in front of me, which was to either go to a boot camp, trying to gain additional technical skill, or get a computer science degree, or possibly get a technical master's degree, which I know a lot of people face. And for me, I ended up going back to school to get a computer science bachelor's degree while working full-time at Google. And after I became a product manager, I proved myself to gain that technical skill. I went on to work at eBay as a senior product manager. I went on to work as head of product at a startup, and now I'm a director of product at Cloudflare.
Awesome. Farnaz, I think you have kind of the opposite story, where you started with the CS degree. You want to share a little bit about your journey?
Yes, of course. Hello, everyone. Yes, I come from a very traditional computer science background, but I did not start by choosing computer science as a major. The way education works in Iran, it's that it's for free. I'm from Iran, from Tehran. Education is for free. However, we go through a very detailed competitive university entrance exam. And I was an A+ student, and I was very arrogant. I picked my top major to be EE, and I told everyone else I don't need to pick more. That's it. That was the paper I submitted. But my mom, out of just being so kind and out of love, filled out a few more degrees for me, a few more preferences. Her first preference for me was computer engineering. So that is how I ended up in computer engineering. And yes, I had that training. I had that bachelor's degree. However, the training did not make me a software engineer. It did not make me fall in love with writing code, and it did not make me confident that I am going to be someone who will stay in tech. But that happened. I came to the US for a graduate degree and started a company, and I learned through fire by just being on the job and doing it myself.
Rosie, why don't you share your story? I think you are definitely someone who has picked up things along the way and has a very scrappy kind of attitude to learning.
Yeah, I was a theater major, a technical theater major, and I actually started out building props and costumes on Broadway, and then I kind of got distracted by actually coding this is going to show my age, coding macros in Word Perfect when it was green screen. And it just caught me. And so one day I opened up the New York Times and there was said 7 months, learn to be a programmer. So I signed up at Brewer College and learned COBOL and assembler language, and got my first job at Information Builders in New York, answering the phones in technical support. And in fact, I answered the phone so often like that, I would do that at home. Information Builders technical support, how can I help you? And so I, climbed that support ladder, and while I was doing that, the internet was born. And so I learned taught myself how to make web pages, and marketing noticed that I was kind of messing with the website, and they decided I should be over there. And I discovered what marketing was, and what sales was, and technical sales, and ended up as a sales engineer. And I was there for 13 years, and then I decided to kind of go back to entertainment. So I went back to entertainment, and I went west and stayed in, did some film stuff for a while, and I decided it was time for insurance and a paycheck again, and floated my way back in. And the last 6 years I've been at Splunk, and happy as a clam, doing sales engineer.
Quick question. I think sales engineer almost feels like an insider term in the Silicon Valley. Can you explain a little for some people who may not be so aware, what is sales engineering?
Sure. Sales engineer is the technical person on the sales team. So sales engineers are the jack of all trades. The technical person who gets to do, our technical knowledge is super wide and deep in the last bit that we concentrated on with the last customer. So you know the products of the company, usually a vendor that you work with, and then other stuff that you adapt. So we're the most technical really that there is, because you have to know a little bit about everything and be able to present and talk and interface and translate for the salespeople.
Cool. And what drives you forward in your career over the years? Like, what has kept you like I don't want to say leaning in, but like engaged to pull the levers to figure out like where to go in your career?
I would like to say it was determination and a laser attention span, but actually it was sort of distraction and curiosity. Honestly, now I have, in my sort of like elder years, I have some very clear direction, I think. I'm actually really inspired by the young women coming in, and I'm really inspired by all the kind of amazing stuff that's happening at Splunk. I really landed in the most amazing place. Very lucky and feel really privileged to be working with people I'm working with, and working in the programs that we're doing at Splunk. Hiring like crazy, by the way. So come take a look at all the stuff and apply. But yeah, I mean, right now, mentoring and being mentored by my mentees, the most amazing thing. So no direction until I found direction by watching all the amazing people who are now coming into the industry, honestly.
Cool. Shanea, what has driven you in your career and your product?
Yeah, so a few things has driven me. I think from my perspective, I love building products. I like being able to, I have a lot of ideas all the time about almost everything. And I found that product management is a really great medium for me personally between being an entrepreneur and working at a company. I still get a lot of those same feelings that I got when I was an entrepreneur, with a lot less risk. And another purpose is that another thing that kind of drives me is that at this point in my career, I feel this kind of personal responsibility to help kind of the folks coming up next behind the generation that's in right now. And so some of us have to take a stand and kind of stay and push through so that we can make change for everybody else. So hopefully our daughters won't struggle with some of the things that we struggle through. And that's incredibly motivating to me.
Farnaz, how about you? Farnaz, how about you? What do you think has been really driving your career forward and the challenges? I know once on the prep call you mentioned motherhood as something that has really changed the way you look at your career and managing your career and life.
Yeah. Well, moving forward, when I started writing code on my own, the joy of creation was what was pushing me forward. But it was getting a little bit crazy. I was I was the engineer who was taking 6 shots of espresso per day and is coding 7 a.m. to like 2 a.m. and only sleeps 5 hours and is just doing that all the time. But then motherhood, yes, it happened. And while I was pregnant, I used to talk to my team and say, well, it's no different. It's just a baby. We will deliver it and move on to becoming the same person, just like that. But when baby arrived, I actually learned that time is limited. There are other priorities in life, and I started prioritizing my work better. And the impact was actually surprising. It helped me make better decisions, because when I was always writing code or working on something, I always thought time is infinite. So there is a lot of time to get back to things, or to not close the loop on something, or to not discuss it today, leave it for tomorrow. When baby arrived, I had to be more on point, and I had to make harder decisions to pick one way versus another, and to be actually more deliberate about what I learn, what I spend time on, what technology I explore, and what I don't. And it has been helpful in that way to give me depth in technologies that I need to have depth in, and leave alone parts of the stack that are not necessarily in my expertise.
Cool. I have a question for the panel, which is, what is a challenge you faced, and how did you fix that? Rosie.
Did I look the most perplexed? What is a challenge I faced? Gosh, that's a long road.
Okay, here's another way to put it. Have you learned from like a career mistake that you thought was a mistake that has turned out to not be a mistake? I think one thing we hear a lot at Girl Geek dinners is, how do I know I'm going on the right direction? Or Shanea, do you have?
Yeah. I fail all the time. And I've had a couple of, I think I had this conversation recently of like, every time I start a new job, or every time I start kind of a new thing, it always seems like right at the beginning, there's always a setback, always. And it came up in conversation because I was like, is it just me? Am I constantly getting setbacks right when I feel like I'm taking 2 steps forward? And I don't think that that's the case. And so I had a couple of really big failures. And at least I've categorized them in my mind as big failures. And I took the risk, but ended up after seeing it through that I kind of failed up, and that's perfectly fine. It's okay to switch. It's okay to change direction. It's okay to move forward. And sometimes you don't know until you try, and completely failed. When I was actually getting my CS degree, I tell the story a lot, which is I basically cried almost every night. It was challenging. It was one of the hardest things that I've ever had to do. It challenged my identity as a core, to my core. And I couldn't be happier that I did it. And every day it felt like the worst struggle ever. But it made me better.
Actually, to build up on that point, we just knowing what is going to work and what it's not going to work is impossible. We never do. We have patterns that we have seen in life. We have interests and excitements. So we just go with that and we push and push and push. There may be a time that we realize, okay, this cause is not a cause that is worth pushing. And sometimes we push and we push. You know, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And you come out of fire feeling like you're unbreakable because you just did that. And guess what? Just a few months after, something happens that feels like the worst event of your life. And if we don't let ourselves feel that we have failed, if we don't feel ourselves burnt and emotionally challenged by something, we will never learn. We will never have any opportunities to grow because we are always staying in our own comfort zone. And when it comes to computer engineering and writing code, it's just like everywhere. It's a very it is a very male-dominated industry, and as a result of that, in many places, the culture may not be as positive as some of us like it to be, or it may not be just the culture that we are used to engage with. At the same time, and that by itself used to be a very big emotional burden on me, that if I don't belong here, why am I pushing? But at the same time, when you push, when you show up, you change the ones around you, and you actually find your own people. You know, not everyone is the same. You find a group of people who are like you, and you work and you have fun.
That's a good point.
I saw not too long ago a cartoon that had two pie charts. One was completely red, circle, and it said, what this is the disaster, life-ending disaster that it felt like. Another pie chart was like a little slice. It said actual problem, and the white thing, it said the thing I will learn from. I discovered in my 30s that I have ADD, and what that manifests as is a bunch of sort of blockers, things that will stop you from being able to kind of complete tasks or keep your attention in places, or it's considered a neurodivergent, right? And it's things that require methodologies to complete tasks that other folks just do. Paying bills, getting through an exam focused, practicing piano. And so for me, I don't necessarily look at things as failures because kind of hitting walls or for a long time, like getting really crappy grades for me was like, okay. And I got used to it, and I would think like, okay, well, I have to figure a way around this more than having something be a failure. It was like, okay, that's what that is. Now I need a way around something, or it was a lesson learned that I hadn't realized before. Like sometimes it was a hurdle I didn't notice was there, and went stumbled over. And then having recognized that hurdle, once I knew what was going on, I would then find a way over it the next time, right? So by like putting a lot of pillows, and padding it, right? So
that's a great way to look at like hurdles and failures as ways to tell, like, this is an opportunity to kind of try something new and figure out a new pathway to what you want. I'm wondering, what is like advice you would give your younger self? This is like any resources or like something you would have done differently, a way that you looked at your careers?
Listen to your elders. You can learn from them. Yes, that's good advice.
I think one of the things that has really hit home for me in recent years is dare boldly, take bold steps, and they are scary. It's really, really scary to put yourself out there, but ask really bold questions and do bold things because you can completely surprise yourself.
Examples for that?
Yeah. So a lot of times in tech, we get, beaten down a little bit, right? And I was just leaving Google and I was convinced that I could not do product management. And so I decided to go on a confidence kick. And I was like, I'm going to get my confidence back. I used to be a very confident person. What happened? And one of the things that I read in, I think, the confidence code was asking bold questions. And I went to a product management meetup with all of the female VPs of Facebook. And I stood up and asked, like, how are you guys helping? I didn't get into Facebook at the time, but how are you guys helping move Facebook forward? Because if you guys couldn't get through the process when you interviewed, which is what they all talked about, how are anyone else supposed to get through today? Like, what are the steps that you're actually taking? And I had to, before I did that, I had to stop myself because I think I blacked out a little bit. I was so nervous. But absolutely it was a starting point for getting my hand raised, getting, a good question answered. It started a really great discussion. And then after, I took another bold step and I basically just walked up to Deb Lou and said, can I interview for you again? And she said yes. So, and I went through the interview process and didn't decide to go to Facebook, but that step of just asking her in front of hundreds of other people and getting a yes was my first big step into that. And to this day, I've continued to kind of live by that because you never know what the other person is going to say unless you ask.
That's a terrific point.
What's the worst that could happen?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Does anyone have a story of the time that they asked for more? I know this is a kind of a theme through the day. We had some.
That was really cool. That was great. Lila was talking about that. That was amazing.
So I'm wondering if there's a specific advice.
I ask for more all the time. I actually had a conversation with another fellow woman in product management this afternoon. And when I started, I made a certain amount at Google, and I had no idea what the context was for asking for more and asking for my worth. And then I started working there a little bit, and I realized, I think I'm underpaid. And I vowed that I would never, ever, ever do that again. Because I felt like I'd missed my opportunity. And in my next role, and the next time that I was able to negotiate for salary, I asked for a lot more, and I got it. And then the next time, I asked for a lot more than that, and I got that. Because again, taking bold questions and just asking the right question and being prepared, you never, ever, ever know. And sometimes you ask bold questions and, bad stuff happens. But it's, again, all of the things can be fixed with proper communication. All of the things, if you're able to kind of dare to have, put yourself out there, then things can be mitigated and things can be fixed. But yeah, I'm constant. And also as a PM, it's kind of a skill to keep asking for more and more and more and more all the time.
That's a great life skill, definitely.
Yeah, that's true.
I am curious it seems like there's different types of people that we meet that attend Girl Geek X events. Some of them are new grads. Some of them are doing the mid-career boot camp career change. Some of them are moms coming back. Is there a specific advice, or is it the same advice to give them on how to come into tech, or like people always ask, how do I get into tech? It seems like, to me, like tech has changed in how people view it over the last decade or two. Like it's become a lot more intimidating, and have things really changed that much? And is there any like advice you would give to people who are looking to just like change their job title or come into a new role?
I did not have a standard background, right, as we said, and in a time when you needed one, right? I was a total unicorn, and it was spoken of lots of times. The guy who hired me held on to my letter and my resume and walked around because he was a character. And if I could do that then, you know, and in fact, I gave talks about it at the Baruch, at the school I went to, because it was weird that I actually made it through to them. And so now it's not so weird. So if it's of interest to you, and I said this to lots and lots of women at Lesbians Who Tech who were, you know, came up to us last weekend asking the same question, you know, but I do this, can I do that? You will not know unless you boldly go forward, as Shanea said. You know, you've got to just push through. I mean, we live in a world now where you can actually just teach yourself stuff and teach yourself enough stuff to boldly say, I know how to do this. And as we learned today, it's just women who think they need to know all of it in order to say, I know how to do that. So yes, you can do that by just saying, I know how to do that, right? Yeah. And then eventually you will know how to do that.
Anyone else have advice for any of these Girl Geek X community people?
I think that some advice is, if this is the goal and you really want this goal, just be mentally prepared that there are probably going to be some challenges. And if I could go back, I would try to have a support system for not doing it on your own and asking for help when you need it. And I read in the book really recently, Dare to Lead by Brene Brown, to have like written on a card what actually really matters to you, whose opinion to you about you actually matters, because you might get a lot of things. I switched careers several times, and I was doing product management work before I had the title of product manager, and it took me 8 months to find a role as product manager, even though I was already doing the job. And that one simple, tiny little thing was enough that no one wanted to take a risk. And I've heard like it could take a long time to get what you want, or being able to test, get data back and user test, like how you craft the story if you're transitioning in. So just be patient with yourself and have the support system to vent if you need to, or test some things out, or role play, or just taking those baby steps. But don't compromise what your goal is, which is why the first part of, if this is your goal, like stick to it. A lot of people sometimes think that it's good to kind of weave around, and I'm going to take this job because it will lead to this job. And sometimes it's just better to just be a little bit patient and just get the job that you want. So I learned that where a lot of folks said, oh, you're transitioning into product management, you should go take a step backwards and be a junior product manager because you've actually never had the title. And I was like, absolutely not. I'm not going to do that. That's crazy. Like, there's no way that I'm going to do that because I've already been doing it. There's something that I'm not articulating. This is not the right company, or something like that, where giving yourself the leeway to try things. And then I went from program manager straight to senior product manager, and I did just fine. It's all right. It was fine. All good.
So I'm going to move on to some questions from our audience. So what types of roles have you seen former educators move into when they transition into tech? And similarly, what advice would you give educators who want to move into tech?
Well, a direct one would be education at a vendor. That would be an easy slide. right? Internal or external. It would be like the sort of straight up, easy, like I can do that, right? If you want to take your resume and say, I know how to teach. Because trainer, education, internal and external, right? That would be the way in, I want a job today, way to go, right? But any kind of a customer-facing role is going to be actually on that. If you can teach some and interact, pick up whatever. I've been in vendors the whole time, so that's my thing, right? So the shortest from point A to point B to me is going to be, right in.
That froze, unfortunately.
Yeah, so I actually agree with Rosie. For a teacher, there are a lot of tech companies that would have good, not customer support, customer success roles, professional services roles, program management roles that basically are you're building programs on technology, so they are very technology oriented, and you will learn a lot of technical things as we do, as if you join us at NovoEd, you would learn. But your core skill set, which is teaching, is critical to being successful in that role.
That's good advice. I also wanted to I think when I talk to people who are looking for jobs, a lot of times people are looking at the same big brands at their roles, but also there's a lot of early stage and medium-sized companies that we don't necessarily think about. And they can be found on AngelList or just like browsing on the internet. You can find smaller companies that will take a chance on people with resumes that show more different experiences, work experiences, life experiences. And I actually recommend that path as well. And then after a few jobs or years, maybe you will be at that big FANG company with the brand name, but to maybe start and thinking about the smaller companies and joining those roles for experience. Let's see. Another question we have here is, Shanea, knowing what you know now, would you still do a computer science degree?
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. So for me, I briefly mentioned that it was identity. I needed it kind of like went right against who I thought that I was by getting this computer science degree. And my options were the boot camp, I already have a bachelor's in business and the CS bachelor's degree. And what I found was that I'd gone as far as I could teaching myself to code. I'd done literally every online class that I could possibly do. The ironic thing is that I actually created online coding training, which is the crazy thing. So for me, there was a different problem that I didn't realize that I had until I went to get the computer science degree, which was, I grew up in inner city Baltimore and my school system, I did not realize failed me. There was a lot of things that when getting the computer science degree and the way that it's taught now, that they assumed that I knew, and I did not. And I needed to go back to school. And I also have a little bit of dyslexia. Who knew? Until I was reading programming documentation for a long time. So I absolutely needed the CS degree to fill a lot of the holes and really ground my foundation of the theory, in addition to the actual syntax of languages. And so I would probably do it again. I don't think the job that I have now, that I could have gotten it without having the CS degree, and not having a solid foundation in the theory.
Thank you. So we have a question here about, was networking a big part of your career pivots or successes? It seems like everyone talks about networking like it's the only way, but people feel it's dirty networking for professional reasons. Can anyone give some thoughts on networking or what's the best way to get a job or a promotion?
Networking was important for me. When I decided to take the role at Google is because I actually kind of stalked a recruiter, like that, a friendly stalking. Like I called all the time. I was like, oh, we have to be friends now. And we're still friends to this day, 10 years later. But just building relationships with folks. The job that I have right now was actually through a referral from a conference, 2 conferences that I met this person at. And I know Angie through friends of friends. And so I think networking is important. You never know what kind of doors we can open for each other, what kind of opportunities. And the mistake that I made was trying to think that I can do everything alone. And you really can't. It's about building a community as opposed to thinking about it as networking. And like, I have to go and do this. It's about building a community and you being a part of a community as well, because we're kind of all in this together. We're all trying to move forward together.
Definitely. Farnaz, have you found networking to be important in your career or?
Well, I know it is important. However, that's why I'm staying quiet, because I cannot be the one recommending people to do networking because I'm the worst at it. I'm actually the one who will sit behind her computer for as long as possible. The introverted of introverts. Don't see me talking like this. We are behind a computer. Just let's see each other in person and we'll see. But I do agree that it is about just going through the startup experience, founding a company, and 6 years into it, I actually, when I look back, every single people that we raised money from, people who became our customers, those relationships that I basically had to build because of my work for advancing the actual work that I was doing, not that I was, they are the ones that I go back to for, I want to look around, where should I look? Or I'm looking for a product manager, I'm looking for an engineer. So it is very important to be able to build that network. However, many of us have challenges with the concept of going out and talking to what feels like strangers, and I don't have any medication to help with that. But I do recommend everyone to go out there and just practice it, because I was very, very introverted. Now, at least when I take tests, my extroversion is more than introversion. So it changes and you start doing better.
Rosie, do you have anything to say about networking?
I do. I think in general it helps to have, it's interesting having sort of kind of bop back and forth, I mean, over long periods of time, but between the software industry and the film industry, building a network of people who, I guess in essence, they're acquaintances. They're people who you know from cocktail parties in the film industry, or conferences in the tech industry, who you see at Just These Things, right? And you recognize them visually, and you don't necessarily have anything to give or take from them, but you see them and they're familiar. You do one day get to call them up and say, hey, do you know this person? I'm looking at their resume, or hey, or how's it going over there? You get to actually pull that ticket, and it's a good thing to have. And so far it's been where people say, hey, do you know this person? They seem to be connected to you. Do you actually know them? And I've helped people get jobs.
All right, we're gonna be wrapping this up. I think we'll take one more question. I think we have a few more minutes. I think this one may be good for Farnaz. We have an attendee who's found that it's hard for former educators to move into ed tech, as many of the roles require sales experience or highly technical skills. And even hard to get PM and customer success roles. Any advice?
Even customer success and PM roles?
Yes.
Well, I think, first of all, try sending your resume my way. And then I think my advice would be, it would be good to look for instructional design or product or program management roles in smaller companies and startups that are more willing to invest in people who may not have the track record of success, but who will be able to be there and put their heart and soul in owning the results. So we actually do that. Like the people who are in our customer success and professional services team, they come right from being a teacher to being in a position of working with our customers directly and building programs for them. And it's actually very interesting. Like with a bit of onboarding, they do such amazing work. I have no doubt that it works. However, try smaller companies.
Okay, I have one final question. This will be a fun one. What's your advice for bouncing back when you do ask for more and it backfires? Like, what is your coping mechanism, self-care? How do you get back up?
Well, I think, so the thing is that, first of all, I think when you want to ask for more, just ask it with data. Meaning when you feel like you're underpaid, there are Glassdoor reviews that give you average salaries and top of the market, below of the market. There are job descriptions from all sorts of companies with salaries on them that you can use as a data point that, for example, you are underpaid. Or if you're asking for resources, like just go with data that backs your story. And if you really have a point but you know, you get the pushback for no reason, what seems like no reason, I actually think in those situations it's good to just get it out of your system, talking to friends, getting coaching and mentorship. And if you actually reiterate the conversation with a mentor, but someone who has not just the mentor, but someone who has asked for a salary change before, and you feel like you had the right, and not you feel like, they also agree with you that your argument was good, they didn't, your manager didn't have anything good to say in response, I actually think that it is fair to be more to not think of yourself as just a disposable resource that can be treated in any ways. Just go out there and interview and look for other jobs and then bring them an offer. Push as hard as you want to. You want to push, just as long as you are doing it logically, you have data, and you are sharing your experience with someone else in the role.
Does anyone else have last feedback for how to bounce back from a potential rejection? Or
I think Farnaz is totally right. Like doing data and having the conversation. I think that moving or separating in your mind the emotion of the rejection from the actual negotiation or the thing that you're asking for is something that I really struggled with. And they're two different things, right? Like maybe there's a reason, maybe there isn't a reason, or maybe there's a reason that someone isn't telling you, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you shouldn't deal with your emotion around it. And so that could just be, for me, it's talking to someone, it's venting, it's reminding myself that they didn't reject me personally, but they rejected the thing that I proposed. It's maybe not, it's a no right now, but not a no forever. Or like Farnaz said, like get another job. Or just like separating those things out is helpful.
You know, I have one more thing to add. You made such a good point. I personally, I find having cheerleaders in life very, very helpful. I have one cheerleader, one best friend who rarely tells me I'm wrong. So whenever I'm going with my emotions high, so angry at the whole world because of the injustice that they just did to me, for whatever reason, he will tell me that I was right, I'm smart, but I have to work on saying it better. Or why don't we say it this way? Like, I just empty the emotion somewhere and then we get to problem solving together. And I think finding yourself a friend, a cheerleader would be very, very helpful to deal with the emotion, because it's very hard not to feel the rejection, but you need to move on.
Yeah. I think being really clear that your argument, if we take it out of the salary area, broaden it for a second, right? Being really clear that you know that whatever argument you brought for this decision was delivered to the person you're delivering it in a way that they can hear it, right? You're going to deliver it to that person so that in a way they can understand. So if it's somebody who can understand an emotional argument, then go ahead and deliver that. But if it's somebody who cannot, do not deliver an emotional argument, because it will fall flat, right? And if it's someone who needs statistics, then show up with statistics. If it's someone who rejects whatever it is outright, and you feel that you have presented it, you know that this is a logical argument and you're being dismissed, then yeah, you have a bigger decision to make, right? If you've been waved off, that's a whole nother, ball of wax, right? Don't confuse that with your proposal being rejected, right? Two different things, really, right? I think that's the clear thing, is that one thing is personal, one thing's not, and none of it in the end is really personal, right? So, and as Shanea said, 90% of the time, that decision, especially if you're an individual contributor asking for something that is directly affecting only you, you may have no idea how or why that decision was made, and it may never come to you, right? So that information should never necessarily turn into us and them, right? And it should never then go out and become an announcement of us and them, right? That has to be processed, because that'll mess with you too. So that was what I was thinking while everybody else was kind of talking. So.
Okay.
I'd also read Crucial Conversations. Super helpful.
Okay.
Yes, very good.
Very, very tactical of like how to go about these things, and kind of some of the tactical things we're talking about, splitting emotion and like the actual execution of the conversation, changed my whole life. So I recommend starting there.
Super cool.
Thank you all for joining us today. I know it's Friday. Thank you so much. We're going to be just tweet at us at GGX Elevate, and we are going to be moving into our next session. So thank you so much for joining us. See you later.
Yeah.
Thank you all. Bye.
Bye.